He's the standard here, and again, I don't think it should be a problem to any of those guys to hear criticism. But nobody's come to me and said, I got a problem with what you said. I think everybody knows, Matt included, that everything's got to take a little uptick, get a little better.
We have to be truthful with one another, and sometimes the truth hurts, and it's no different than when your kids make a mistake, right? You tell them about it.
There was a lot more said by both Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur yesterday. LaFleur spoke first, Chris, and LaFleur was committed to not making this a thing. His attitude was Aaron Rodgers has every right to say what he said.
Right.
He didn't call anyone out by name.
Right.
It never got back around to the point that I made yesterday, and I think you agreed with me, that Aaron Rodgers was necessarily calling out Matt LaFleur by complaining about, number one, guys are making mistakes 20% of the time, mental mistakes, and number two, those guys should be benched because it's Matt LaFleur who has to be assessing those situations, making those decisions, and taking those actions. LaFleur steered clear of that, and no one asked him about that point blank. Had a couple of questions that kind of got around the edges of the idea that it undermines LaFleur, but it didn't really get there. And then came Rodgers later, and Rodgers was unapologetic, unrepentant. He had the line that a lot of people are dragging him for. Some people in this society can't handle the truth. That was just one little snippet of the things he said. But his attitude was, I said what I said. I don't regret it at all. And guys need to hear criticism if they're ever going to improve. That's what he had to say yesterday in a nutshell.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't. I just think, and one, it's great to hear that, again, these are things that he's obviously has said there in the locker room, said to these players. I just think the thing that rubs me the wrong way, or I just go, I think the different tactical ways maybe to go about it than the way he did. And then, again, it does become an issue. Now, again, maybe he's being tactical in the fact that he thinks he needs to air these things out, and that's what gets changed there in Green Bay. And we have seen that before, and you brought that up yesterday. So maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe that's why he does this. But, at the same time, it doesn't make him look good that way. And it does put pressure on the situation as far as the head coach and the leadership there. And, it's again, I'm not above the criticism or, hey, we need to play better or we're making too many mistakes. But I think he got, into specifics and then started talking about benching people and all of that as well, to where that's where it comes off sounding funny to people and maybe a little bit of a distraction rather than a, team building exercise.
Well, and that's where it becomes odd. You're talking about benching guys that are making mistakes, and they asked him yesterday if he had specific players in mind. They didn't ask him to name names. They just said, do you have specific players in mind? He says, not necessarily. We've just got to put our best 11 on the field. So he does have specific players in mind because he believes the best 11 aren't on the field. He's just trying to avoid saying the names publicly, and that seems to be the line that Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers will respect. You can say all this stuff as long as you don't say anyone's names. Well, I don't know that I agree with that. I think that everything that he said is something that should be said privately, that's the kind of thing that no organization should take public. I just don't think that it's helpful to the cause to have Aaron Rodgers saying those things publicly. He should be saying it privately. And at one point he acknowledged, well, if you're talking about private conversations that I decided to share with the public, he almost agreed that maybe there's something wrong with that. But he's not wired, Chris, to come out there and say he was wrong, to say what he said. He got a little too casual in his safe space on Tuesday, and maybe he said something he shouldn't have said. He's just not he's not a guy who's ever going to admit that maybe he made a mistake.
No, he's not. And like we said yesterday, I don't know if he necessarily cares anymore about what people think of him. He's, in a comfortable spot in the fact that, his contract, he's set up there for the next 2 years or 3 years. So he can do kind of whatever he wants there. And, yeah, he's not happy. You know, he's not happy because he's got some young receivers and not that much talent at that position as far as guys he can depend on a week-to-week basis here. And he wants to get those things done. I understand, all of that, but yeah, it's just, again, I don't think it does any positives to what he did there. But maybe I'm wrong. Again, we've seen him do this before and it work out the right way for him and his football team. So we'll see. We'll see what they look like. But I just think it's odd, and it becomes a little bit all about him again. And, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the best way to lead a football team or players. I don't think it's going to get the guys in the locker room to love you that way. Yeah, they're not going to say anything to you in your face. You're Aaron Rodgers, and, if they say something to you that might make you mad, and then you don't want them to play, and you do say something to the head coach, or, you do hold a grudge that way. So, that's doesn't really mean anything either, that nobody came up to him. I don't think some of those young rookie receivers who are making mistakes are going to be the type of guys at this point of their career to come up to him and address that. They're not. They're scared of him. He's the king to them, so they're not going to mess with him. Okay, I got to get better, but they might not necessarily like it, or it might not have given them the confidence they need at this point either.
Yeah, that was another one of his quotes. If one of those guys has a problem with it, I'm right here. Okay. He's Aaron Rodgers, and these are guys who are still wet behind the ears trying to figure out where they are, and clearly they're not smart enough to play on an NFL field in the assessment of the great and powerful Aaron Rodgers. So the last thing they're going to do is tip down the hallway to have a conversation with the Wizard of Oz. They're not going to do that. They're afraid of him, and stuff like this will reinforce their fear. One more on that point. He was asked what it will take to eliminate the mental mistakes, and he said time. And he doesn't mean the passage of time. He means putting in the time. We have a schedule. We're creatures of habits, but when we leave this place, we've got to be making sure we're doing the right thing when we're home.
Yeah, I thought of you when I read this.
Some of that's watching film.
Yeah.
Some of that's studying the plan. Some of that's studying ourselves. But we've got to make sure we're ready to go every single day we step in the building. Says the guy who skips out on the entire offseason program.
I knew you were going to go
there. Who doesn't gather his receivers wherever he may be to get comfortable. He was talking about, you know how they run the routes. Well, that's why they spend all that time together in the offseason. So you're not figuring this shit out on the fly in late October. I mean, talk about irony and hypocrisy. He's calling guys out for not putting in enough work when he ghosts the entire franchise from February until late July, but for a cameo appearance at the mandatory minicamp. Are you freaking kidding me?
I hear you there. I can't stick up for him there.
Now.
I can't stick up for him. I can't. And again, I'll always say Green Bay made this animal. This is what they do there. They make their quarterbacks kings, and they took the crown off Favre and then went to Aaron Rodgers, and you're the king. So that's why it's a little different there. And then there's no owner like we talked about. But, yeah, hey, Mike, when I read that, I thought of you right away. I went, oh, well, cue Mike saying he wasn't at OTAs and you would have had a lot more time. And, I can't even help with some of this stuff, too, to go, it just what's crossed my mind, and this is going to be snarky a little bit, but, I wonder how Sammy Watkins feels about that Aaron Rodgers on another level than Patrick Mahomes comment right now. Wonder how he feels about that, because it sure don't look like that to me. It looks like some other guy in red and wearing 1 and 5 is on another level. But I don't know. All those crazy things are going to my head right now because the Packers are kind of annoying with their talk and all that.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.